Let's talk about debt, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Let's talk about all the good things and the bad things that may be. Let's talk about debt.
Well, I am so excited today to bring back someone that I had the pleasure of meeting on a family vacation. We were actually going to Georgia and we were staying on a lake there. And I can remember there was a couple families. And we had decided prior to going on this trip, like we wanted it to be easy. So we ended up hiring a chef. Well, little did I know that when this person showed up, I would absolutely fall in love with her as a person. One, the food was amazing. Our kids still talk about her yogurt every single morning. She would cut up all this fruit and have the best yogurt we've ever had. And just our whole experience was incredible. But I was so impressed at that time. And how many years has it been, Amanda?
Gosh, was that 10 years ago? I'm like,
Literally at least 10 years ago. And I had the pleasure of meeting for the very first time Chef Amanda, which is what I refer to her as because she is my all-time favorite chef. So thank you for coming on the show.
absolutely. Thank you for having me. Hi, everyone. I'm Chef Amanda. And I've
Yeah,
always just been Chef Amanda. My last name is something that has changed apparently, but I always just go by Chef Amanda because I want us to have a good relationship. That's what I like to build.
you're like a brand. I mean, Amanda is just a brand, and the chef just sums it all up because it's how I remember you also. And I know when we had you at the house, how old were you at the time? Like you were just getting
Oh,
started in this business
I
and this.
think I might have been like 30. No, geez, I think I just turned 30. And that was
Wow.
I had really just gotten out on my own. I had been in restaurants that whole time prior to. And it was funny because everybody else was starting to use social media and I was using Google. I only
So,
used Google and Yelp.
wow. And look at you now. I mean, I've watched you over the last 10 years, and I just want to say, one, it's Black History Month, and I have just I'm so inspired by you. I'm so inspired by your hustle, your grit, and you haven't stopped. Like what you're doing now
Yeah.
with your food, and just like, I cannot wait for you to share with the audience, like what makes Amanda so different. So,
Magic.
with no further ado, welcome Chef Amanda to the show and share with everyone like where did this love of cooking come from for you?
Honestly, I'm from Southwest Georgia. I was born in Albany, raised in Vienna, and we still got raised old school. So everybody, we all know how to cook. That's being a good woman still. We still really do get brought up in the old ways and not as much now. Capitalism makes it where we have so many different responsibilities as women, but that was one of those responsibilities that we still had. And so the women in my life, my aunts, my mom's friends, my babysitters, like my grandma, between my friends' moms too. I was really lucky to have all of these women who took hospitality in their homes so seriously. We joke about the plastic on the couches, but that's to keep things in mint condition because you want when people come over and you've put out your best foot forward that it is legit your best foot. We have preserved it to keep
Yeah.
our best foot forward. And so learning all of that in the sense of Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter, New Year's, for celebration and for togetherness of family, you see these women go over the top for the people that they love.
Mhm.
And there's something to me that translates through service. I think what changed me was a trip to the Ritz-Carlton with my mom while she was working on her PhD. And I'll never forget the server. Her name was Mercedes. And this is why I'll never forget her because the way that with the Ritz-Carlton service is so in depth, it imprinted on me as a kid. My mom had to go to PhD classes every morning. So this server noticed that my brother-in-law liked waffles. And so she set up a little table for us every morning. She brought us coloring books because she knew our mom was busy. And we'd look up and it'd be like 3 hours later and we didn't even realize we weren't bored. We've had food, we've had breakfast, we've been well behaved. Like, but this woman didn't have to do that. But every morning for 2 weeks while we were there, she made it so special. And I've always really marked my service around that. And I wrote her a letter and everything when I was a kid, like to tell her thank you. And like, I remember just my mom thinking that was important for me to do. Like, well, if you feel so strongly, you should let her know. And
That's
so
so,
I did.
that
But
is
since
so
then, that's been
good.
hospitality for me.
And so you've just grown up loving serving other people, which I think is such a gift when you have that chip.
It's the
But
entertaining too. Like
yeah.
I love the vibes. Like I love seeing people who normally don't smile get the giggles. Like, like people who will tell you, "Oh, I don't drink," but if you make the cocktail good enough, they're like, "Oh, that is delicious. What is that?" Because it's not always about being inebriated. Sometimes it's just about the small enjoyments of flavor and how they combine for another feeling.
Totally. That's so good. You said something, I have to go back to it because I think that we all walk through life sometimes with blinders on and we don't realize the impact that we can have in people's lives. And I know how much you impacted us, even meeting you in Georgia and all of our families. We loved you. We still talk about but it left an impression just like this Mercedes did for you personally and really changed the trajectory of your future to
Hmm.
cause you to want to be in this industry because of the way you were treated. And that's so powerful. We never know what people are going through and what they're experiencing every day, but to encounter someone who really leaves a mark like that, man, what a gift.
And that's like the cool thing about personal and private chefing is why I got out of restaurants. Like, partially it was they weren't paying me enough, but the other thing was I could never get that perfect service, like I
Yeah.
couldn't control it top to bottom. And there is something about, especially like I'll use you guys as an example because you got two families, you guys have all these kids, so people don't get like how many pallets that actually is. And as chefs, we're so caught up in the back of house and in the kitchen and oh, I'm a chef of it all, that we kind of forget what this whole thing is about. And with kids, you've got this really interesting captive audience to like, ooh, well, what is that? And the challenge of I don't eat green, and I don't eat purple. Well, you don't even bring purple food here, and that just start. But that is you requesting me to bring purple food. Challenge accepted.
You're
Like
right.
it's those little experiences, and making jokes with them, or like I think the coolest thing I enjoyed with you guys was like you like Chrissy Teigen too. And I was like, yes, I wanted to cook from this cookbook, but I didn't think anybody was going to like want to pay for that. But
That's so funny.
but they were such fun recipes and the kids loved them and we twerked them just the slightest bit, but
Yep.
it was cool. Like we had a really good time. And
Yes.
that's something that I always want to be able to give. And you were kind of the first rendition of that because it was funny. Websites say the same. It's always spoken to the same clientele. So fast forward years later, and when Heather Dubrow sees that same website, I finally found the words for it because it was different working with you guys. I wasn't just cooking, I was an extension of your care for your family. It
Hmm.
wasn't about just the food. It is about the hospitality of it all because what you wanted was what you would do for them. And
Right.
that's something that makes me a very different brand from other personal and private chefs is that I'm very drawn to powerful women and I'm very drawn to powerful nurturers. And
Mm,
so I enjoy the idea of being an extension of your care.
so
Even with
good.
the boss I have now, my catering team, like my boss is a nurturer. She is a very powerful nurturer. And
Yeah.
what I do for her is the culinary logistics so she can continue nurturing on a large scale. But all of you line up the same. You are very powerful nurturers.
That's so good. I love that. And so right now, do you have a food truck? Like I've seen you on tour. What are you doing?
So, I'm a 420 baby in real life. And that just
Yes,
led
I
me to like
do.
so that led me like cooking with cannabis and it just started out having fun making pecan pies for like friends and stuff, but
Oh,
it
I
got
have
to
to
be
know,
fun.
did you ever make us any cooking with cannabis meals while we were there?
No, absolutely not. Like that's one of the, you really have to talk to me about that. Like that's a whole nother booking. And at
That's
the
so funny.
time, I wasn't even doing it professionally. I was just playing around with it. So when I found out California was going legal, I immediately moved. Like it looked
Did
like,
you
well,
really?
yeah, dude, cannabis was going legal and Trump was definitely going to win. So I was like, I want to go experience life in a blue state. Like you see what I say on social media. I have a big mouth.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I need to go live in a blue state.
So you packed up everything.
I did. I packed up. Like, yo, he won. That was November. I was in my apartment by February 5th.
Wow. And so did you launch the food truck there?
I didn't. So I actually ended up I kept going personal and private chefing. I ended up doing work with HBO, Spotify, Andrea Drummer. I started working with Heather Dubrow, Jackie Ina, and just a bunch of different brands, Willow
Amazing.
Cannabis. And then I ended up getting on Cooked with Cannabis. So I did that show. And then because everything lives forever on Netflix, it's always constantly bringing me something. So that
Amazing.
actually keeps weed more alive in the background than it actually is in my work. Like, cause see, you've actually worked with me
Well,
and it never came up. See how,
no, but
and
it's
it
been
actually never
hit.
comes up.
But you know what? It's really interesting because in entrepreneurship, I always tell people like you have to solve a problem, right? You have to solve a universal problem and find that blue ocean strategy to solving it. And you took two worlds and you collided them in such a beautiful way that it was like this magical thing happened. So even though you do so much around cooking, that was the thing. That was the thing that
Yeah.
brought Amanda out to the world, right?
It was cannabis, but it was also Heather because she kept posting me, kept telling people, hey, you need to know who she is. Like she just kept
Amazing.
doing that. And that really put me in a lot of people's faces that maybe didn't know about black food in the way that I talk about it. Like, we talk chicken and waffles a lot and we talk like shrimp and grits, but very rarely do we talk like grits versus rice in regional dialects and how those palates change as we go from place to place, or how some of us, we make our collards with malt vinegar because we don't have snow. So our collards are always a little tougher at the harvest. So it's things like that, that
Yeah.
actually I teach. So prior to 2020, nobody really cared about my oral storytelling like that. It was like, you're doing too much. And then, like, we were in this war against even saying critical race theory. Now we're just all anti CRT. But at the same time, I have more eyes and attention now on this research that I've been able to learn so much and empower so many people just with information from my mentor.
Yeah.
Kevin Mitchell is over at the not Charlotte. I went to school in Charlotte. He's in Charleston, but he's at the Charleston Culinary Art Institute. But he's there, and he is also got his master's in Southern Studies from Ole Miss. But
Wow.
a lot of the research I've been able to find through him and David Shields. And what I'm doing is taking a lot of these just very easy demos, because in culinary school you don't need me to teach you how to cook. You mainly just need context for how to do things that are culturally appropriate. And
Mm,
so with Decolonize Your Palate, I started doing that in 2020 on Zoom with different companies as a webinar. And it's really just opening up to curiosity and teaching people that we eat based on where we live, not based on what we think we are. And so this idea, for instance, that like, all black people eat this and all white people eat that, but then Southern food, make it make sense. Like, no, Southern food is really based on region. Like, we all eat based on a geographical area. Like, even gumbo, for instance. Like, famously, gumbo is very much a New Orleans cuisine, but gumbo actually is more similar to paella in that it is a regional stew that we all make differently based on where you live. Where I'm from, it's okra, and back in the day, it would be rabbit, chicken. It would be like that, like more woodland animals because we aren't around water.
right.
Whereas, in New Orleans, yeah, it's going to be heavy seafood. But from place to place, like you'll find, like as you go further into like Alabama, Mississippi area, those stews have sausage, and Konica sausage is huge there. But like regionally, we all eat very different. And so I can take a recipe and basically we cook through it, and I just tell stories as we go through the recipe. ask questions, answer questions. It's a whole back and forth. Because honestly, Gen Z doesn't care about our PowerPoints.
That's right. No, but it's so good though, and I think those are the stories people remember too. Like
Mm-hmm.
when you're able to share things like that, I'm sitting here listening like, man, this is amazing. I didn't know a lot
Yeah.
of the stuff you just spouted out.
But that's the cool thing about working with you guys, right? Like even for your children and you guys, right? When they go out into the world and they see black chefs, they don't question whether that chef is actually a chef. They've
Right.
met a chef in real life,
The
and they
best
know that
one out
chefs
there.
also look like me. So,
Yeah.
it's like representation is so much more than social media, and a lot of us don't see that. But it's like, it's those little things. And then when we give that bit of information, right, to like, hey, here's some more historical context, you're like, dang, okay, now you can go tell the story. But every time you tell it, oh, wow, it will spark something else. And that's our goal, is just to imprint.
So good. Fascinating. Like, I love just hearing you share because it's so powerful with what you're saying. And I think a lot of times we walk around with blinders on and we don't get the full story and we don't try to understand individuals and what their motives are and what their businesses are and what they're doing that's unique. And you say it so well. It's like,
And
just tell a story.
And that's part of it, is that really taking your story as an entrepreneur, and that typically is where your revenues will come from. Like,
That's
in all seriousness, the more I lean into who I am, what I want, and what I feel my purpose is, the more avenues of revenue that come in. Like, I would have never thought that cannabis would be an avenue of revenue for me. Like, but also I was very closed off to it as well,
right.
until I realized, like, okay, you know what, if I'm going to do this entrepreneur thing, I actually need another way to make income, because the reality is people only go on vacation a certain amount of months out of the year.
That's right.
But I had edible customers year round. Like, so it was,
Amazing.
and then I had meal prep customers, but meal prep falls off
Yep.
about February, March, and everybody decides like they're done with their New Year's resolution. So
Right.
I realized, like, when I got on my own, like, oh my God, I need so many avenues of like revenue streams coming in to
So
make
good.
this whole thing work. So that has actually been like one of my big things, actually, in teaching Black Americana in culinary schools, is for those chefs of color to really understand a lot of your superpowers in your story. A lot of those, your best dishes are probably deep within. That's probably what's going to make, like, that's what's going to set you apart. That's what's going to make you the money. It
Yeah.
wasn't doing what I learned in culinary school that's made me this. Like, it's everything that made me prior to. And that
But
gave me the the
you let
polish.
people in. Like you let people in to see who Amanda is, right?
Yeah, and that's tough. They teach us not to do that.
That's
But
right.
art cannot be made without life, and we have to connect for that.
Hmm. It's being vulnerable, and even for me on my side with sharing my story with filing bankruptcy, and now I help people with credit card debt. And honestly, that's what I've done for the last 15 years. And you're right. Had I never shared that story or leaned into my experience, I wouldn't have been able to be where I am today and help so many people through their journey. And so I can so relate with your story. And I know as an entrepreneur, Amanda, it's not always easy. Like everybody looks at entrepreneurs and thinks, man, what an incredible story Amanda has. She's living the life. But I know as an entrepreneur, it's not always coming up roses. And so, what do you think what's been the hardest thing navigating this entrepreneurial journey you're on?
I think the hardest thing is really understanding the multifacetedness of support. Like, and what it looks like, because everyone in your life, A, does not have a full cup to give from.
Mm,
B, they might not have a cup of Joe you're interested in. And then C, your cup might be across the street today. Like,
that's right.
you just never, you know what I'm saying? Like, sometimes
Yeah,
people want to support you and then the timing doesn't align. They want to support you, but they have something going on and they can't pour from an empty cup. Like, they would like to support you, but actually they didn't understand it. It was over their heads. Like, there are
yeah,
so many spaces, I think, where entrepreneurs can feel so alone and isolated, and being able to discern what support looks like in its many forms, I think is something that is so hard to do, but it brings so much peace.
That is so good because it is. It's lonely a lot of times for an entrepreneur, and especially along the journey where you feel like you need the support of those closest to you and the expectations are off. So you're expecting one thing, but you're not getting it. And then it just
Hmm.
snowball effect.
And sometimes they really don't know how. I think a lot of us
Right.
forget like how busy the mind of an entrepreneur really is, in that sometimes like you really do just need, like, I got several chef homegirls that are like, we don't talk about anything but work stuff. Like, yes, we talk about like stuff, but like it's mostly homegirl work stuff, because you need somebody to pop with real quick. Like,
Yeah,
hey, what does this sound like? What is that? What do you think that might look like? Like, where could that go left, or sometimes you just need to flesh it out. But that's not always going to be with your friend that is like the person that you actually talk about your life with. That person
exactly.
didn't go to culinary school with me.
Right. It's
You know what
almost
I
like
mean?
you need a specific friend that's on the same wavelength as you are entrepreneurially.
Yes.
It's just this constant dialogue of bantering and throwing ideas back and forth, and that's where the recipe comes from, so to speak. That's how it evolved.
Exactly. Even just like knowing if you're like, I know I am a very sensitive person when it really comes down to it. Like, integrity is a very large part of my work. So even in the feeling isolated, like sometimes I need to isolate because I have to give a lot. So sometimes like I have to also cocoon and come
Yes.
back in, recenter, so I can be able to give. And that's also something I think has been really hard, especially as a creative entrepreneur, is still maintaining creativity under the wheel of capitalism, because even though I might not always feel it, the
Mhm.
reality is I still have to be able to create from the hip. And so
Right.
training ourselves to do that, like, it sucks. It's really hard, but you have to also be creative from the hip, because I can't be like, oh, well, I'm in a creative slump. And then now that's the day that, Nike
Right.
called and said, we want da 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 da. Am I going to say I can't? You know,
Right. It's always,
I'm
yeah,
going to
I'm
dig
on
deep,
it.
but this also why we're constantly in notebooks, journals, taking notes. Like, when people wonder, like, why are some of us always working, especially the creative ones of us? That's why, because sometimes, like, I'm not feeling creative, but girl, I got a notebook I can go back to right now, and
So good.
something will be in there.
Yes, you'll be triggered by something you wrote previously. That is such a good word, especially for entrepreneurs, because we all experience. We all go
Yeah.
through slumps to where we feel like I have nothing right now. But when you have those seasons where it's overflowing and the ideas are
You're like,
running, like put them down, right? For that moment when you can go back to it. So I know where you are now. So what do you see in the future? Like what's next for you?
So, I'm really hoping, because I've had a really good time like on this travel team with boss lady Chef Nikki. So I travel with the high end affair team, and we specialize in bespoke experiences for a lot of different clients. She's worked with Questlove, Chappelle, Pamela Lakshmi, like so many people. Like,
So
Nikki
fun.
honestly is crazy, crazy amazing. So like I'm having a really good time with her because I've never had a woman boss. Like, and I know this is gonna
You
sound
are a
crazy
boss.
as an entrepreneur, right? No, this is gonna this is gonna be the craziest shit I say as an entrepreneur. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
It'll be the craziest thing I say as an entrepreneur. I am really, really excited to be in a job that values me. I've never had that before. I became an entrepreneur because I had to create that for myself, not because I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but because the hospitality and restaurant industry is just not safe. And so I created a space for myself to be safe and to be paid fairly, and to, not be harassed and all those things. Like, you've seen my contracts, it has a bullying clause in there. Like, but
Yes.
I'm having a really good time right now having a job, because I never got that, like,
So
a
good.
lot of people, they got their dream job and then they went to entrepreneurship. Like, I worked hell jobs and then I created a job that I thought was really, really cool, and I do like it, but I love my job, and having a place to feel supported and thrive and all that stuff
Mhm.
is actually opened me up to the idea that I was limiting myself previously. Like, So whatever my plans were for in 5 years, like honestly, last year, I realized in the last few months, like I really wasn't thinking big enough. I was limiting myself based on what I could do
Wow.
and what I could do for me. And now, like actually being on a non-toxic and actually functional team, I'm like, oh wow, I've actually never thought about what that looks like.
Wow.
So I'm
That's
looking
so
at, so
good.
yeah, I'll still have this food truck with my husband. Maybe we'll like pop in a dog or a kid or something. Uh,
Yeah.
you know,
Seriously.
something like that. I'm adding a lemonade stand to it because, forever a food entrepreneur. So like I'm building out this business because eventually I would like to franchise it.
Oh
And so
yeah.
that's my little project there. And then I have my Black Americana Studies workshop that I'm still traveling with,
So
working
cool.
with a team, and I'm still a ChefWorks brand ambassador. I have a lot of jobs.
So if people want to get in contact with you, to our viewers, because I know I'm so inspired by your story, and even for those who are in the hospitality culinary world who may be listening, like how can they connect with you?
Yo, connect with me on Instagram. I really suck at everything else, but Instagram is my bag. I
You're
give you
good at it.
actual honesty there because a lot of people give you like, it is highlights, yes, but it's my real career. Like, I don't do anything personal on there solely so I can give you everything I got at work. That's not on an NDA. So I give you everything I got on work that's not under NDA.
That's awesome. Well, I can tell you, and I am witness to the fact that she is such an amazing chef. I miss your food so much, Amanda. I can't wait to have you back in our world in some way, shape, or form. We've got to do like a reunion at
We
some point.
really do. Please hug every single Dunkin' and Bizet for me. I know it's going
I
to take you a while, but
will.
you'll get there.
I will for sure. And I adore you. I'm so proud of you and inspired by you. Keep up the good work, and we will be in touch soon. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Oh, thank you. I love you guys so much.
We love you. We'll talk soon.
Absolutely. Thanks, Amber. Bye,
All right.
guys.
Bye.